opportunity. And yes, if this, we need to give the food regulator teeth to investigate the certain rules that the meat factories are applying in relation to the four movement rule, and my contention, and indeed all the farmers out there contend, that this four movement rule is very, very, very unfair, and also the 30-month rule, where they're penalised for cattle that go into the factory that are over 30 months, because like I've said before here inside, and I've been raising these issues for many years now, Minister, how do you know when a carcass is hanging up there, hanging off the rafters, as we call it, hanging down after what age that animal is? I mean, that rule is totally unfair, and as is the four movement rule, and someone needs to challenge the factories about those two issues, and they need to be given an explanation, because I firmly believe that they get the same price for those cattle for that beef as the beef that's under the 30 months, or as the cattle that go in that don't go over the four movements. So we need to get a real honest answer to that, because farmers are penalised unfairly for that. And the other aspect, and I don't know where it's coming from, but it's certainly affecting farmers right across the board in relation to beef. You have you go into any mart there today, and just because a weanling or an animal is not the right colour, and the right colour at the present time is a kind of a goldie or a white Shirley or a red limousine, but you can have an equally good animal when we talk about a Shirley, a grey Shirley, or a black limousine, and the beef, according to the farmers, and I believe them, and I can see their point. There's no reason why the cattle of the same weight or the same quality shouldn't make the same price, and that needs to be investigated by someone, because farmers are suffering because of colour. And I think that's very, very unfair. And look, we need to give the regulator the powers to follow these things up, because this is the difference between a farmer making or a producer making a few bob or not. And there's inconsistencies there that need to be investigated. And if this food regulator is going to be worth his salary or his pay, he needs to have powers to follow those things, because them things to me and to many don't make any sense. These rules that they have, or these ideals that they seem to be following, and they're hurting farmers and they're hurting producers. I don't think that anyone knows, when they have a steak in their plate or a bit of boiling beef in the pot, that they know what colour the skin of the animal was before it was slaughtered. And there needs to be fairness to be seen to be carried out in this regard, Minister. And look, there are a lot of other things that need to be questioned, and I'm still asking at this late stage, why has the cost of green diesel not come down, Minister? I'm asking you to follow that, because so many farmers out there can't understand why it's actually double the cost of what it should be now. And please follow that up, Minister.
Thanks, Deputy Curran and Carthy and Healy-Rae, for your contributions, and both of you for your contributions in this. So listen, this is something we've had significant discussion on at committee stage as well, and I outlined the position in relation to it then. And I suppose, listen, I've worked to be very collaborative in relation to making sure that the office we bring in here serves farmers and primary producers well, and is effective, and has the powers necessary to do its work. And I want to acknowledge the role that all Oireachtas members played in that, both from pre-legislative scrutiny right through the process. And in relation to the pre-legislative scrutiny report, which the Oireachtas put together on a cross-party basis after meeting many stakeholders across the sector, there was 20, as I said the last day, 20 recommendations made in that pre-legislative scrutiny report, and 18 of those 20 I accepted either fully or very substantially. And likewise, throughout the process here, looked at and assessed in detail as well the various amendments that come forward, with a view to accepting those which I felt would help and assist the bill. Because I want to ensure that the office we put up, which will be the first time ever there's been a statutory independent office bringing transparency to the food supply chain, and particularly with the objective of bringing fairness in relation to primary producers, I want to make sure that that office works well. There's two issues which we disagree on. Deputy Carthy referenced one of them, being below-cost selling, and the other one then being this role in relation to the application of competition law and anti-competitive practices. I outlined in detail the last day the reason why I don't believe below-cost selling will work, either serve farmers or serve consumers either. And one of those reasons being we actually tried that for a long time in this country and it didn't work, and that's why it was done away with in the mid-noughties. We had below-cost selling, it didn't work. It added cost, didn't benefit the consumer, didn't benefit the farmer, so it was discontinued. So we've been there, done that, tried that, didn't work. So we have to learn from that. That's one reason. And then I give an example as well in relation to, for example, taking our biggest product, beef, in relation to applying would below-cost selling work there. And I outlined that because of the fact that 90% of the beef that we produce is exported out of the country, that no matter what price you're charging for it here or you're forcing to be charged for it within the 26 counties, that it's still only going to apply to 10% of our total beef production. And only 1/10 of the total animal that's sold by a farmer actually will be priced at that price. The rest of another 90% of the beef would be sold at world market prices and all of the international markets that we sell into at the moment. So for every extra euro, for example, that you're charging the consumer, only 10 cents of it would come to the farmer. And it would only be the Irish consumer that would be paying those higher prices. And I give the example even, for example, of Northern Ireland, whereby if you were charging a certain price that had to be charged in the Republic, the prices in Northern Ireland would be at more in line with whatever the world international prices were and whatever the rest of the 90% of our beef is being sold at. So what you'd end up having is consumers in Ireland, and only in the Republic of Ireland, paying a higher price, but it having a very, very negligible impact, if any, on the price that farmers would be getting. And I just don't believe that that would achieve its purpose, which should be to actually try and improve farm family incomes. All it would do is hit all families' incomes within the Republic and have a negligible impact in relation to farm family incomes. And also all of the challenges we have around the border, we already have them in relation to fuel prices, etc. As I said the last day, from Louth right across Donegal, where's the person that's buying the meat for the family going to go if they're close to the border, if there's a high price on one side of the border, and if there's a price more representative of world prices on the other side of the border? Not only will they be going across the border to buy their meat, they'll be taking other business with them, and we can imagine what our retailers would think about that. So that's why I believe below-cost selling isn't going to achieve the objective of actually trying to ensure farmers get fair play. It will have the impact it had for many, many years in this country of not doing that, and instead adding red tape and cost to the supply chain, adding extra cost to the consumer, and having no impact in relation to the farmer and their income. So we disagree in that. And it's open to Sinn Féin to take a different approach if you ever get into to government in the future. That's up to yourselves to introduce below-cost selling. Should you wish, you can apply that to the 26 counties. You could offer it as part of your offering to the 32 counties for United Ireland, should you wish, that you'd charge the 6 counties higher price for beef as well. But listen, it's not going to be very attractive to consumers anywhere, nor indeed is it going to be of benefit to farmers either. So we disagree. We disagree on that. The other point we disagree on then is what this motion is particularly referring to is the application of competition law and anti-competitive practices. I'm setting up the regulator to make sure that we bring transparency to the food supply chain, to make sure that we can give farmers fair play and that they're getting fair reward and price for the produce that they're producing, that ultimately the price that's available in international markets, which is where the vast majority of the food farmers produce is sold, that there's transparency in terms of the price that's available in international markets and how that's traced back to the farm gate to make sure that farmers are getting fair play. The amendment that Deputy Curran is bringing forward here is a one-line amendment that is indicating that this legislation should now, that the agri-food regulator should cover anti-competitive actions in the food supply chain. We already have very, very comprehensive law in relation to competition law and anti-competitive practices. One line in this bill is not going to replace the reams of legislation that it took to put anti-competition law in place for the CCPC. It simply would not put the architecture in place to be able to do that. It would simply lead to confusion and duplication. What this office will be obliged to do, and should be doing and will be doing in relation to any unfair or competition issues that comes across, it will have the capacity and will refer those to the competition and the CCPC to carry out that role. They have the investigative powers, they have comprehensive architecture of legislation in place to be able to do that. So listen, we disagree on this point, Deputy Curran, and I would say that this one-line amendment to what is a very, very comprehensive legislation to do many things to ensure farmers get fair play, a one-line amendment is simply not going to achieve what you're outlining here you would hope it would achieve.
Yes, Kyle, at the gates in Bandon and Rathkeil, I remember being asked several times by farmers why were they not being paid for the 5th quarter. And the 5th quarter is the carcass and every other bit of the animal that the farmer doesn't get paid for, but yet the factories are getting paid for that. And I want, if this food regulator is going to have any real purpose or benefit to the farmers, he needs to go after that, because farmers are being shortchanged. They're not being paid for all the animal, and they're not being paid properly at times for the part of the animal that they are being paid for, but they never get paid for the 5th quarter. And factories are raking in this regard, and they need to be followed up to see. And we didn't appear to have any power to follow this before, but I'm asking you to give the regulator power to follow these people, because they're all doing the same thing and they are acting like a cartel. And someone used to say, if it waddles like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. So there's something going on there, Minister, that none of these factories, and it seems an eternity ago since we raised this, since the farmers had to go through these protests and gave nights and days out in the rain and the cold. And we appreciate what the struggle that they went through at that time. But it seemed like an eternity since those questions were asked, and we're still here in the Dáil and we still haven't got answers for the people. And I'm asking you now to ensure that the regulator, whatever power he will have, that he'll have power to follow this up as well. Thank you very much, Cahill.
Yeah, thanks, Deputies Curran, Carthy and Healy-Rae and Healy-Rae. So as I said, listen, my objective in this bill and this legislation is to introduce something which will make a real difference on the ground, which will bring transparency and which will be implementable and effective. I've explained earlier, Deputy Carthy, the low-cost selling and the example in relation to beef and how that approach wouldn't benefit farmers and wouldn't benefit consumers either. And that had been the experience in relation to the groceries order. And that was the reason that was discontinued, was because it wasn't working and it wasn't effective, Deputy Carthy. And listen, you're welcome at any stage in the future, should you have the opportunity to reintroduce something that didn't work in the past and it add cost that didn't benefit consumers or didn't benefit farmers. But what I'm about here is following through on a commitment that I give in opposition, that Eamon O'Keefe before me as spokesperson on agriculture had initiated the work on as well, and which one of the reasons why we went into government was to deliver something meaningful that prioritises farmers and works to give fair play to farmers. And as I say, in relation to this particular amendment, and just the line which you're seeking to put in is that the regulator shall be responsible for anti-competitive actions in the agri-food supply chain. That's the line you want to put in. Listen, there's reams of legislation covering that very issue under the Competition and Consumer Amendment Act, reams of legislation. By just putting one line, a one-liner in, that doesn't provide the legal architecture to do. That doesn't provide the legal architecture to do what you're trying to claim. Trying to claim that will achieve. If you feel that there's issues and challenges there, the way to do that is to amend the legislation and the architecture that's in place, not to introduce a one-off line in another bill. And to touch on that point, and also the question that Deputy Michael Healy-Rae asked me, the reason I'm bringing in this legislation is to ensure that there's fairness and oversight and transparency in the food supply chain, and to be able to give that confidence to farmers, and to not just the confidence, but the actual practical effect that there is fairness in the food supply chain. And that's what this whole food regulator legislation is about in setting up this office.